there's still a lot of people who are struggling. And in fact, if we don't provide unemployment insurance, it makes it harder for them to find a job.
Denying 2 million Americans unemployment insurance will wind up costing us hundreds of thousands of jobs.
Well, that was the prediction. And 12 months after ending those emergency jobless benefits, this is actually what happened. Hundreds of thousands of jobs were created, not lost, just about each month. And a recent report says cutting those extra benefits is one reason why. Rich, you agree?
Yeah, I do agree. You know, not lost on employers is this idea that if you have unemployment insurance that's going to go on forever, who's going to pay for it? Employers are going to pay for that, and so they're going to get defensive. You know, what this did was stimulate both employers and potential employees to go out and hustle. It was a good thing.
Well, Rick, those sots or those sounds on tape that we heard of the president, of vice president saying a year ago, jobs would be hurt if you got rid of the unemployment benefits. They were wrong.
Well, clearly they were wrong in terms of what they said. But I got to tell you, if you were looking at the studies that were coming out a year ago, what you would have seen was the prediction that it was going to be as the president said. Now, it turned out things took a very good turn. I'm not really buying that it was because we cut unemployment benefits. Can find the studies on both sides. I think the economy got better.
Well, John, here is why the president and the VP got it wrong. They don't get that incentives matter. If you're incentivized to go out and find a job, you'll go out and find a job. If you're incentivized to stay home and collect benefits, you'll do that, right?
Absolutely. Incentives matter. If you're getting a check from the federal government, there's necessarily less urgency to go out and find work when you're not feeling well, when it's rainy, or when it's a sunny day. You can also be more choosy about the kind of job you accept. So with the reduction of these benefits, people have been more likely to accept what's out there and get back into the workforce, and that in itself has stimulated economic growth, too.
So, Sabrina, I understand there's a lot of questions about the unemployment figures. I have a lot of questions about the unemployment figures. However, it does seem that getting rid of those unemployment benefits was a boost to jobs, not a hindrance.
Absolutely. Look, it might be uncomfortable to say politically, but that it is good policy, and it gets to the sort of core of the ideological differences between the left and the right. You know, people like Nancy Pelosi and the president think that you can hand out sort of freebies to the American people and that that's going to lift people out of poverty, that's going to help them, while you have a conservative camp, most of us here on the panel, who would say, look, there are things that government can do to make our lives easier, but the so-called free handouts come with serious economic consequences.
Steve, do people get it now? I mean, after all, the president who was putting forth these ideas, it turned out to be wrong, won huge in his reelection. Would that argument still win today?
He's not going to abandon that kind of argument. He'll make some trimmings to it, changes to it.
But do the American people get it?
I think the American people, most of them have always gotten it, but this crowd around the president himself does not get it. Reality doesn't seem to make much of a dent on these people. And in terms, one thing to note, though, is that the jobs that have been created until very recently were low-paying jobs, and that's because the benefits were cut, so you went out and took what you could get.
Yeah.
And Emac, we can compare various counties with other counties. One's because unemployment benefits very often are a locals thing as well, right?
Yeah, that's right. You know, and what's also interesting too, David, Princeton did a study with Stockholm University, I think, and they found that when the benefits went up, the job searches went down. So, you know, it's really interesting. But, you know, long-term jobless benefits, where you all want to help people, it's not a long-term economic policy. Look at L.A. They have had a 17% jobless rate. They lost two dozen major companies since 2011. You look at FDR. With 6 years of FDR, the unemployment rate was still around 17% with his policies.
But, Rich, getting back to my question to Steve, I'm wondering if the American public really I mean, the American public has gone with this fool's gold, stuff that glitters very bright. Oh, we can make people happy even if they don't have jobs. Nancy Pelosi even suggested that it helps the economy to hand out unemployment benefits.
Well, David, all you have to do is look at the 2014 elections, and you see that the American people have moved decisively to the right on economic matters. So I think the president and Nancy Pelosi have lost the argument with the American people.
And Rick, hold on a second. Rick, did I hear you say that it does help the economy hand out unemployment benefits?
For a very simple reason. And by the way, the very study that you're citing said in the final part of that study.
I think you're distorting it. But the point is, make your case. Make your case, Rick.
Case is simple. If people have no money in their pockets in a consumer-driven economy, they can't spend anything.
Steve, is that true?
They have to have money.
People search harder when they know that their insurance is going to start to run out. We've seen that time and time again. The 2012 election, David, was not about free stuff. It was about a miserable campaign by the Republican Party. If they'd done it right, they would have won that
to Rick's point, it's not free stuff, and it's like taking a blood infusion from one sector, the private sector, the productive sector, and giving it to another, and losing a lot of blood in the meantime.
That's exactly right. It's taxpayer finance. John Tamny has argued that as well. And so we have to, taxpayers have to pay for those benefits.
John, go ahead.
Yeah, if you put money in the pockets of one set of workers, you're going to remove it from another set. So there's no actual stimulus here. Let's face it, rich countries can have high rates of unemployment precisely because they'll pay people not to work. But every time when you see the reduction of these benefits, people have an incentive to get back to work, and that's what we're seeing right now.
Sabrina, go ahead. Last word.
Yeah, well, I beg of people to think about the same unintended consequences that come from these unemployment benefits that will happen if we raise the minimum wage, if we offer paid leave, if we try to micromanage wages within the workplace. All of these things are sold as manna from heaven. They will all end up hurting workers and creating fewer jobs.
And as Sabrina said, we're begging you, folks. We're begging you. Look at the evidence. All right, the Cash It In gang getting ready to roll at the bottom of the hour. Eric, what have you got?
Hey, David, the president suggesting Americans get on a high horse after ISIS burns a man alive. What does that mean for our lives and the economy? And he's comparing what these monsters did to what Christians did centuries ago. Plus, a new push to nearly double the gas tax could have the president's blessing. We'll see you at 11:30.
All right, Eric, we will be watching. But up here first, the government wants to start regulating one huge part of our economy. It doesn't, the Internet. Some here say get ready for higher prices and less access to the Internet as a result.